The president was very clear. This had to be a good agreement. No agreement was better than a bad agreement.
These negotiations were essentially about curbing Iran's nuclear program in return for suspension and then later on lifting of international sanctions against Iran.
I think it certainly made doing business much more difficult to have social media everywhere.
Those times of eating together, breaking bread together, always are useful in building the relationships you need when you're in the midst of such a tough negotiation.
I ask everyone to put their iPhone in the fridge.
I think from the outset, most people were rather skeptical and thought that the chances to get a deal were below 50% because everything came together. Enormous technical difficulties, complicated technical questions, and on the other hand, the political framework, which was also extremely difficult. So we had to deal with two challenges, a technical one and a political one.
It's about, centrifuges, stockpiles, stable isotopes. Rather quickly, you need people who are experts. I'm not an expert. I became a little more knowledgeable.
Negotiations, it's not only a negotiation with Iran, it's a negotiation within your own government. It's a negotiating with each of the partners who are sitting at the table, and then with the P5+1, the permanent members of the Security Council, plus Germany, plus the EU, have to come to an agreement, and then have to come to an agreement with Iran.
When the talks were going on like that, it was a logistical nightmare for everyone, journalists included. So every time there was an extension, every time they were missing a deadline.
Can you say a few words for Level, please?
Hi, Scar.
As soon as our live broadcast was over, we would all rush to the hotel reception, extending our rooms or booking new ones for the next round.
Good luck, guys.
Thanks, cheers.
تصمیم گرفته ایم که مفاد برنامه اقدام مشترک را تا 9 تیر ماه سال 1394 تمدید کنیم.
I don't think any of us knew how this process would evolve, but over the 2 years the number of people of course grew that were directly involved in the process, because we had to expand the team according to the needs. But it's also part of our daily bread in terms of host country policy and good offices that Switzerland has provided for the last 150 years. So in a way it's also in our genes.
Each time a minister arrived, the Swiss ambassador in Geneva, the chief of protocol of Geneva and myself were at the airport and greeting the minister. And our foreign minister always welcomed them with a personal letter and some Swiss chocolate.
Obviously, when you start to welcome these dignitaries and the amount of security, the amount of cars that arrived when I was standing in front of the hotel, you know, for some minutes you feel like being in a, or looking at a Hollywood movie, but being part of it. It all started with, at the beginning, around 70 rooms. Bearing in mind the hotel counts 168 rooms. At the end of the talks, the hotel was fully booked.
This room was the working room, the heart of operations, but also my personal room, because from the Swiss Foreign Ministry, one person had to stay all the time, 24 hours in this hotel, and we get only one room. So I had to transform this room in the working room, in the heart of operations. We were about 10 persons in this room for the meetings, but also then my team came during the day and they work day and night here in this room.
It was not a luxury life we led, and it was a relatively small room for a relatively big group of people, with many, many computer screens on the table, pizza boxes everywhere. It felt, at the end of the day, more like a student's home than a luxury hotel.
We weren't surprised at all that we were the target of intelligence agencies. In fact, we used to joke that the number of bugs in a room probably would cancel each other out. Everybody wants to try and learn about the other side's playbook before they enter into a game, as well as countries that were interested in the outcome of the process.
We knew about the sensitivity of these negotiations. So this is, for example, when I had my pre-meetings with my own team, which we basically had every morning, I asked everyone to put their iPhone in the fridge.
Allegations were made, and these allegations are investigated by our Federal Prosecutor Office. And these investigations are still ongoing, so I cannot talk here on detail.
I think it certainly made doing business much more difficult to have social media everywhere and to have our every movement recounted on Twitter. And my wife was always emailing me to ask why I was eating pizza on a random, Friday night and not getting on a plane home.
In Lausanne, the talks were dragging on and on and on. So once, when a European diplomat was coming back to the hotel, just grabbed him in and said, "For heaven's sake, and for that of my planning, please tell me how many more days you think we might be here." He was coming back with a bag of shopping. He didn't say much, just opened that bag and showed me what it was inside. There was a stack of new, fresh underwear.
asked whether I got to know the Iranians. We all got to know the Iranians, and whether we, started to really understand each other. I have no doubt that we understand each other better. You can't spend that many hours with each other and not. And we certainly got to know each other's lives. Abbas Arachi and I both became grandparents during this time. And so we shared videos of our grandchildren. That didn't change how tough we were with each other in the negotiations, because he had a responsibility to the national interest of his country, and I had a responsibility to the national interest of my country.
I got a tip-off from a source that told me the Iranian foreign minister had arranged for the US counterpart to go and dine in this Persian restaurant and experience Iranian food. So I rushed to that restaurant and sneaked into the place, and guess whom I saw? The top brass of US negotiating team in that restaurant, dining and eating Persian food.
We had a phone call. They said John Kerry with his delegation, they are coming to our place. So we received them and they had dinner here. He was leaving. I asked him, population of Iran, they are waiting for this negotiation. I hope you will get the success of this negotiation. So he told me, did you say to Mr. Zarif this? I said, no, I didn't, but I'm telling to you. So he said, I will call him and I will tell him what you told me.
There were 2 dining rooms, one for the P5+1 in the European Union, one for the Iranians. That was in part because our dining room had alcohol and the Persian dining room did not. But as the talks went on, Minister Zarif invited several of us to dine with the Iranian team, which was a very good thing to do, and the food was fantastic. And those times of eating together, breaking bread together, always are useful in building the relationships you need when you're in the midst of such a tough negotiation.
In Lausanne, the talks broke for a few days because the Iranian president's mother passed away. The president's brother was a key member of the Iranian negotiating team all throughout the negotiations. So in the morning of that day, the US team went to the Iranian counterparts, headed by John Kerry, to console the president's brother.
March 2015 was a turning point because it was now or never, and it took place in Lausanne. We had, the framework agreement, but I think Lausanne, where agreement was in a way crystallized, framed, and then negotiation endgame. So it's step by step.
I think what was the hardest part of Lausanne were those last 2 days when we were trying to drive to a conclusion. No one had any sleep. We thought we might not get there. We thought we were close, and so we all agreed to stay one more day. And indeed, we then got to the parameters that became the basis for the final 27 days in Vienna.
I will never forget the moment where the EU told me that we can organize and go ahead with the press conference. We were waiting for 72 hours for this moment. It was a very emotional moment behind the curtain. And then it came the moment they asked me to open the curtain.
Today, we have taken a decisive step. We have reached solutions on key parameters of a joint comprehensive plan of action.
When Federica Mogherini was chairing a round with the ministers in Vienna during the endgame, when she had a heated argument with the Iranian foreign minister, and he said, never threaten an Iranian, and then the Russian foreign minister came in, nor a Russian. But then things calmed down very easily. But we had similar, probably, kinds of exchanges. We also had walkouts when I stood up and said, well, I'm not going to continue now for the day. But then we resumed early next day.
Zarif, are you going to have a deal? Are we going to have a deal?
We have made progress today.
Progress is being made.
Она пока еще не достигнута, но прогресс.
Making progress, we need to make some more progress in order to get there.
In Vienna, the talks were dragging on and on. They had to write the text of the final deal. And it was proving to be far more difficult than they had anticipated. So they missed the deadline of July 1st, then they extended it to July 7th, then July 10th. They ended up on a rolling deadline, basically. Just before midnight, when the top Iranian negotiator Abbas Araghchi posted something on his Instagram, the picture of Iranian supreme leader's hand as if he's signing off something. There was no commentary, but that picture was speaking for itself. That's when we thought there might be a deal. Later on, our cameraman caught the Iranian negotiating team, late night in their room. They were very relaxed, happy and smiley, going through that text, which ended up being the deal.
I knew for sure that the deal was done 3 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of July. This is actually when we finalized the texts. I felt tremendously relieved at that moment, but it was just so overwhelming that I can't even say I was happy. It was just relieved. It's done.
امروز یک روز تاریخی است. برای ما افتخار بزرگی است که اعلام کنیم که به یک توافق در مورد موضوع برنامه هسته‌ای ایران دست یافته‌ایم.
I think that the Iranian nuclear deal made a huge contribution to solve the nuclear problem in a peaceful way. And I'm strongly convinced if we had not reached this solution in summer 2015, we would have been confronted with a very difficult situation, including a discussion on military options.
When we reached success, and it was a private moment for everybody to reflect on what we had done. And each of the ministers made a statement, and every statement was truly eloquent. And Secretary Kerry was the last person to speak. And he recounted that when he was 21, he went off to war in Vietnam. He made a commitment that he would do whatever he could in his life to make sure that there was never war ever again. And that's what he was about in this negotiation. The room was absolutely still. There was quiet. And then everyone, including the Iranians, applauded. Because I think for all of us, we understood that what we had done was to try to ensure peace, not war.